Welcome back. The title of this mini lecture is The Crusades, and we're going to talk about 5 terms that, as you read more and you learn more about the history of the Crusades and the crusading era, these are good ways for you to get a gateway into the complexities of the time period. So, let's get into it. The first term for us is Council of Clermont, or Clermont. So, this particular council was convened in the year 1095. It was convened by a guy by the name of Pope Urban II, and this is usually the council that and the event that is cited for being where the Pope calls for Christians to sort of go on and undertake the Crusades. Now, this is a process that we do have some chronicles from folks present at the time, and they do make it pretty clear, this idea that Christians needed to go to the Holy Land. They needed to, essentially recapture Jerusalem. They needed to do so in the name of Christ, and that God wills it, or Deus vult, and the idea that if you go out and are a soldier or warrior in the name of Christ, that if you do so, of course, your sins will be forgiven. So largely, this is a process that begins in 1095. Now, there were a number of events that had happened in the Middle East that had contributed to the Pope calling for this in 1095, and such as the Battle of Manzikert and others. But between 1095 and early 1096, you see in modern France and Germany, essentially collaborative armies being formed in a process to begin a First Crusade occurring. That brings us to our second point, which is the First Crusade. So the First Crusade begins in 1096. It is completed in 1099. Just over 100,000 individuals from across Europe who are going to take part. And the idea is that they're going to travel to eventually attempt to retake the city of Jerusalem, which they will after a long siege in the year 1099, where once the Crusaders enter the city, they carry out some violent acts of atrocity against many of the civilians there, often Muslim, in some cases Jewish, and in other cases carrying out attacks against Christians themselves. The violence the Crusaders will undertake here is profound and pronounced. And once they have captured the city, they feel they've sort of achieved much of their objective. The sort of religious exaltation they feel themselves in here is pretty strong. The third point for us is Saladin, or Salahuddin. This was a Kurdish leader born in Iraq, who in the 12th century will play a very, very, very important role in the battles against the Crusaders, and is noted for his actions and treatment of those who he's going to encounter. Now, by the time you get to the 12th century, there's 8 crusades in total. You're going to have a second crusade. The first Crusaders, they're done. Then they establish the Crusader states. By the time you get to the Third Crusade, the idea here is to kind of go after the Kingdom of Jerusalem and to attempt to retake the city, which Salahuddin does by the time you get to the end of the 12th century. So there's a few different battles that they're going to fight, where by the time Salahuddin is successful with his army, Jerusalem is in the process of being turned back over. Which kind of takes us then to our fourth point, Crusader states. So you've got about 100,000 or so crusading individuals who begin the process back in the 1090s. After their initial successes with the First Crusade, one of the things that they do is they establish a series of political states as a way to try to maintain the presence that they established. So there will be 4 large-scale sort of Crusader provinces. One is in Antioch, the other is in Tripoli, Jerusalem, and then Edessa. And for the most part, these are going to stick around for nearly over 200 years, up until the last battle at Acre, and the eventual driving out of the last Crusaders after the following of the last Crusade around the year 1291, where those Crusaders are going to end up in Cyprus, I believe, in Cyprus. Now, Cyprus, of course, had been a kingdom used for a base of operations for the Third Crusade, really the Third Crusade. All right, this brings us to our fifth point, which is the Children's Crusade. Again, Religious violence, religiosity was not attuned simply to the modern Middle East during the era of the Crusades. You do see, of course, actions of religiosity across Europe during that time period as well. And one of the more prominent examples of this is what was called the Children's Crusade in this time, where the whole idea was to gather up young preteen individuals and essentially have them walk over land or on ships across the Mediterranean to eventually redeem and go back and retake the Holy Land. This, of course, was a terrible failure. Many of these individuals are either going to die or be abused or sold into enslavement or sort of this kind of thing. But it really sort of furthered the idea of the role of religiosity really across Europe that is happening at this time. Thank you very much.